Cisco.
Hello and welcome to Fireside Wisdom with Childless Elderwomen. I'm Jody Day. I'm the founder of Gateway Women and we are the Nomo Crones. And if you are wondering, Nomo is a word I created. Hi Trish, which means stands for not mother, and crone is not an insult. So we are the Nomo Crones and we gather at the solstice and equinox each year for the last few years to sort of talk about issues and really to be the face of what it's like to, to get old as a woman without children, and how it's not all doom and gloom. There is a bit of doom and gloom in it sometimes, but that's kind of life. But really to show the way. I was just thinking today as I was preparing, my thinking for this, like, what would it have been like for me at 30 and at 40 to have met women like us? How differently would I have framed my infertility through my 30s and coming to terms with my childlessness in my 40s? And I have to say, really kind of hitting my stride in terms of feeling really empowered in my 50s if I'd known women like us, because the media paints such a depressing portrait, and the media is a reflection of the culture, so I can't just blame the media of basically, aging as a woman, full stop. But then the only word of respect for a woman over 60 is grandmother. All of the others are insults. And the fact is that crone isn't an insult. Hag even isn't an insult. These are just words that the patriarchy has turned into insults. Hag used to mean holy, and crone means the crowned one, as in crowned with age. So there are lots of, if you look into the etymology of these words, they take you down some really interesting paths. So we're here to shake it all up, to show our faces, to tell our truths. And really, I don't really need to say much more than that. Lovely to see so many of you here. I'm just going to click down. Yeah, that's great to see so many of you here from all over the world. We have with us at shocking o'clock in the morning on Thursday, Susan Dowry from Australia. It's about 6 a.m. with you? Or
5 a.m.
5 a.m. with you. Very impressive. Kate is in Oregon, and so is Sue Fagaldelic. Maria is the East Coast USA. She's calling from Virginia. Mary is in the UK. Elizabeth is on the road somewhere looking very glamorous, but somewhere in America. And Trish, Patricia Fawkes, blogger at Just Me and Lily, is also in the UK. Not sure, bit like Where's Wally at the moment, where it might be in Lincolnshire, might be. So our kind of question today was, we kind of had to think about what we wanted to talk about. And the solstice is a really powerful moment. It's a turning point in the year, whichever side of the planet you're on. It's a very potent moment. And we started thinking about, what does it mean to be a radical old woman? And Stella Duffy, who can't be with us tonight, sadly, said that stands for ROW, row, which also could be row, as in having a row, or row, as in, rowing our own boats. And I kind of started wondering, perhaps to use Kate's expression, actually, living a life outside the mainstream of motherhood, does that actually predispose us to becoming more radical as we get older? And also, what does radical even mean to each of us? So, yeah, who would like to kick off with, what does radical mean to you? Sue Fagaldelic.
Hey, I looked it up this morning because I wanted to see what the dictionary said versus what I say. And the first definition was a root or an origin, something, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But then definition number 3 comes to, where is it? Have not followed the traditional pattern of, which we have not, in our case, marriage, motherhood, and grandmotherhood, which we're both forced and free to pursue a whole totally different path. And I know I am. I mean, my mother wouldn't be caught dead in a thrift shop shirt. $2.
He was
I've
robbed.
got an office I've got an office instead of a nursery,
Yeah.
it's my life is different. I think about, I had a step grandmother, Grandma Rachel, who did not have children of her own and inherited all of us. And most of the family thought she was crazy, that her behavior was unacceptable. She was an artist and a writer, and she liked to do her own thing. She was loud and just totally non-conventional, but she was radical in her own way. She was, and she was my mentor.
Yeah.
So, being radical is okay. I mean, aging comes in all different colors. I've got a neighbor, also childless, who just told me a week or so ago that she's moving into a senior residence and selling her house. And I looked up the place and it looks like prison to me. It's like, I am not old enough for this. I will never be old enough for this. And, so it comes in different ways, but I want to be the radical one I'm working. I plan to keep working until I can't work, because I love it.
Yeah.
And that's not the standard pattern either. But we're not following the regular patterns, and that makes us radical.
And I think whilst we're in that, process of grieving our childlessness, the fact that we don't fit the pattern, it is really hard. Like coming to terms with not fitting in, not belonging, being the odd one out is it's an incredibly hard price to pay for entry, perhaps, to enjoying being different. It is really.
Oh yeah.
And we've had registered for this call. We've got people right across the age spectrum from their 20s through to this was the people who said how old they were. There's quite a few people who didn't. I've got one lady who's registered who's 77. So we've got everyone across the whole life course with us. And I mean, it's I think the issue of, where am I going to age, is a really big one. And I think when we do our webinar in September for World Childless Week, we'll get into more of that kind of stuff then. So thank you, Sue. Who else would like to say what radical means to them? Kate Kaufman and then Elizabeth. Did you raise your hand, Liz? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I was struck by what you were saying about our culture has laid this upon us. And I had the privilege last night of going to a book launch for a Native American woman for a memoir that she wrote. And she reminded the group, which was quite large, of something that I had been aware of and had forgotten again. But in Native American cultures, and I'm probably indigenous cultures everywhere, that the elder women who haven't had children become the elders, the grandmothers to everyone in the entire community. And that to me, it kind of flies in the face of, oh, we're supposed to be these invisible outside the mainstream people, that in fact, we have a huge invitation to be heard, to speak out those things which our biological grandchildren might go, oh, we don't have them, so we get to say them. And we don't have a really good idea about how old we are because we don't have those different benchmarks and milestones that note the passage of time. I don't know how old my friends are. I mean, I ask them sometimes and it's just like, oh, you are? Oh, you are? Huh. So I think that's an element of radicalism that we not only can own, but we must own in order to fight some of the stigmas and stereotypes that just stick around forever. We can be heard.
Someone wrote in the chat, in Uganda, the word, I don't know how to pronounce this, jaja, which grandmother, is used for all ladies of a certain age, regardless of if they have produced. Why does English language make it so exclusive? I do wonder if perhaps in Uganda they are still closer to some of their indigenous customs. And actually a really, really fascinating book, which I just happened to have here because I was just consulting it the other day. It's called How to Be Childless, A History and Philosophy of Life Without Children by Rachel Trestle. And she's an American history professor. And it's not a book about being childless, not by choice. It's really more about the history of childless and child-free. but she really talks about kinship systems, and particularly indigenous kinship systems, and how they are much more horizontal. This kind of nuclear family silo, hi Karen, is terribly limiting. And certainly even when I was growing up as a kind of working class kid in Britain, there was, any sort of women who were around who were in some way kind of friends, or, I would go to their place after school, or they were aunties. There was not this, are you biologically related? There was a much looser, broader, more inclusive kinship system around me. And I think something Rachel Trastall talks about is how vulnerable the nuclear family system is, because, one person gets ill, or one person dies, or one person is out of work, and then the whole burden of the family system, falls on one person, where actually these broader, looser connected family systems are much more resilient, and can enable, children and families to survive difficult times. So it's really, and I think for many reasons, I think a lot of the younger generations now are working out that they kind of need to stick together. I mean, they're not going to be able to afford to have their own homes. and in a way sort of replicate the sort of nuclear family silos of the boomer generation and the Gen X generation, if they had them, because they're not going to be able to afford to. Maybe they don't want to, maybe they don't want to live like that. I think it's all up for grabs right now, in lots of radicals ways. So welcome to Karen Malone Wright. Karen, we're discussing what does the word radical mean to us? And we were going to go to Elizabeth next.
Hello, I'm in Wisconsin somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. I'm on an iPad, so I can't see the chat. So if anybody has a question for me, I just want to let you know I don't have access to that. I have recently been thinking about what radical means to me, and a few weeks ago, considering about a year and a half ago, I was talking about letting go of all my identities. There was something about, I don't want to have any more identities. I want to let go all of them. And it was a radical moment for me. It's like, I don't want to be defined by that word or that group or that narrative or that, whatever. I wanted this to break free, some kind of freedom from these identities, and just let myself roll along and emerge, in some fashion. And recently my mother-in-law passed away, and I've been reflecting on her life, and her sister is childless, and how much those two women have influenced me. My mother-in-law was 93 when she passed, and her sister is still alive at 96. And the conversation between the two of them here at the end of life was at turns hilarious and poignant, and it was so precious to me, because her sister was really important to me. I didn't realize how much an older woman who's childless was a part of my life. And she would say things like, well, you don't have to do that. Why don't you go do this? Or, just say it like it is. She is still so radical. And so what does that mean? And then I reflected back on them. They were born in one, political party, and they switched to another as times changed. There was a fluidity to their life that I don't see so much, right now. And it's just been a precious time thinking about, what does that mean to be radical, living a different life. But my Aunt Viv, my husband's aunt, has been, she's been an elder to the community and to her siblings' children, and very much a part of their life, and still correcting her sister, by the way, right up to the end, Marilyn, I mean, and Frank, she said, this getting old, I don't like it. I don't want to be in the assisted living home. I want to go back home. When are they going to take me home? I walk with a cane, and now it's got a seat, and I can only go 20 steps and I have to sit down. What does that look like? What are people thinking about me? She was just out there, with who she was. And I can still see my mother-in-law walking through the lobby of the nursing home, saying to a helpful staff member, reminding her of the pandemic protocols, and she'd pipe up, "This isn't my first pandemic, She was, don't tell me what to do. I've been here. I've done this before,
Brilliant. You can't answer back to that, can you?
Yeah, what do you say to that? I mean, she's lived through a couple of them, you know, she's just had been there. So I think I'm feeling really grateful right now. Grateful for all of you. Grateful for those women in my life, my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth, from somewhere in Wisconsin. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. And there are a couple of people in the chat saying they're in Wisconsin too. Yeah. Yeah. Who else would like to share next about what radical means to them? Trish.
Yes. I'm not on mute, am I?
No, you're here. You're live.
Just. Well, I mean, I think probably what I'm going to say is what's already been said, a lot of it. But my feeling, I thought, what am I? Am I radical? And you know how you go along thinking, oh, I'm radical. I'm radical. And then you think, well, go on then, how are you? And I'm not sure really. It's just a feeling. And probably it happens when you get older, as Sue has sort of said. But my own feeling is that as childless women and men, but we're talking women here, we're talking to the converted in a way. We're talking amongst ourselves. My own feeling is we have to get beyond that barrier and get out to families. They're not our enemy. Families aren't our enemy. We need them. They need us. They're not our enemy. We don't need to treat them as enemy. They don't need to treat us. They just forget about us. They don't know we're here. They have no idea about us. You know, I tell them I'm childless. What? Like, yeah, never thought of that. You know, it's amazing. And somehow we have to join with families. It may not be a popular choice, but I feel we do, because where I am, I'm not found community. They talk about community in government and authorities and so on. And where I live, community has disappeared. It's very transient in this country now, in many areas. People move, they move again, they come in, they go. There's no time. They go in, they shut the door, and that's it. And you don't get to know them. I've just been in North Norfolk, as you know, Jody. I think that's the last time we sort of had a bit of a conversation. I'm back in Lincolnshire now. I haven't yet bought my house, but it's on its way. It's still in a holiday cottage, but you know. And in North Norfolk, it's very, very family orientated, really family orientated. So me and her, the dog, we went walking along Wells next to Sea Harbour, and there was just me. There was just me as a one. And people sort of look at you. We sat on a bench, me and the dog, to have a rest, and people went by and they said, hi. And it's a sort of, hi. Like you've got a sign around your neck that's, I'm on my own, you know, I'm on my own. And Joe no mates, that's what we say here, Joe no mates, which is kind of sad. I mean, it shouldn't be that way. It just shouldn't be that way. And I got back to the cottage and I just thought, this is wrong somehow. This is not right. I shouldn't have to walk down Wells next to Sea Harbour or anywhere else amongst all these families, and they think I'm odd and I think they're odd. You know, why can't we join up? How do we get out there and get our message out there to our MP, to press releasing? You know, there are ways. I know that, you know, our governments have a lot more to think about at the moment, but we are here. They talk about these things. They talk about communities and then do nothing about it. Just throw it out there. And, you know,
I think community is a word that can be bandied around, but it's about something much deeper. And I think there are so many, as much as there are many people saying they would like community, there are so many systemic things that our culture have created that make it really hard for community to happen. And I think family is kind of almost one of the very few places left where people experience a little bit of community, if they do, not necessarily that it's fun. But I think to your point about, you know, we need to get the message out. First of all, we have to find our voice, you know, and I've really seen that with Gateway Women, is that, you know, 12 years ago, no one was talking about this. And we have created a conversation which is now going into the culture. You know, between us, we've written books, we've written blogs, we've held conferences, we've done things that are amplifying our voice. And now with this, you know, and the work that, you know, Trish, you're doing and others are doing, we are starting to take the conversation into the elderhood space. But in a way, we have to talk amongst ourselves and get louder and louder. And I have to say, if we want community, I've discovered we have to create it. No one's going to do it for us. No one's going to stop and talk to us.
No,
So it's really hard, but it's like, we have to do it. And there are ways to do it. And I think for our September conversation for World Childless Week, we're really going to be honing in on that.
good.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Absolutely. We need to shift things. There's a limit to what we can get others to do, but we can do stuff.
Yeah, we can. It's always little steps, isn't it? You know, things
Sometimes
start.
maybe some big ones as well, but I'd love to hear from Maria, if you're ready to speak, Maria, because Maria's, I think, just about the most radical elder I know, and is such a huge role model of mine. And yeah, I hate to set you up like this, but you are a bit of a guru to me. So
it's funny, I don't feel like I'm radical at all.
No, really?
No, but I've always been different. And I agree with Elizabeth about identity, for the identity. You know, I don't need it, you know, and yeah, for me, radical, I think may have started long before I was childless, because I grew up in an environment where you couldn't think for yourself. So to me, being radical starts with thinking for yourself. And so once you start down that path, you're actually going down the path of what we call radical, because you are, you know, opening yourself up to ideas that, you know, just basically distance yourself. And so basically you're distancing yourself from community that, you know, as you were talking about, Patricia, you know, if you want to have community in a lot of ways, you have to go along with the way people think. And there are certain ideas about how to be and who to be and all that kind of stuff. And so there is that gap. And I personally think that we're at a time where everything is going to come apart. That our systems are totally unsustainable, and simplification, really important right now. Downsizing, really important. And I think that one of the ways that we're going to transition out of this very tight economic system is going to be by basically reclaiming our lives from it. So the economic system really does own people in a lot of ways. I mean, you're always fighting to keep from being rejected so that you can eat, you know, and that's a really cruel system. And I think maybe one of the reasons, you know, people don't participate so much in some of the events that are going on in the world is because they're exhausted from it. And they've had enough, and it's time for us to take our lives back from it. And what does that look like? We have to simplify. I'm going to be very radical here. We have to simplify, go from quantity to a quality-based life, and take back all of our time and energy. And that will open up space, not only for ourselves and letting go of all these identities that are driving us crazy, and we'll have room for each other.
And that's what we need for community, is that community requires energy.
It does.
It requires, when you're walking down the road and you bump into someone, that you can spare 5 minutes, because you don't have to get back to your Zoom call to you know, for one of your 3 jobs to make enough money to keep everything going. You know,
if you have that conversation for a few minutes, then do you have time to follow up with that person and actually spend more time with them and actually get to know them
and invest in, you know, in order to create community is based from relationships, and relationships are based of investing in people, and investing is time. It's doing favors for people. It's doing things that are actually not convenient for you. You know, it's not about, oh, I'm going there, I can give you a lift. It's like, I'm not going there and I'll give you a lift. You know, it's about really sort of, you know, investing with our lives in the lives of others.
In order to do that,
community.
In order to do that, we have to have our basic needs met. So we have to get to a place where, instead of putting all of our time and energy into frivolous things, and we're going to start putting basic needs first.
Mm.
And when you do, it's safer and easier for you to actually do those things.
Mm.
So it really just opens up a lot for
Yeah.
everybody.
I mean, I grew up in the countryside. I moved to London. I was born in London, then I grew up in the countryside. Then I moved back to London when I was 19, and I left London 5 years ago now, and I live in rural Ireland. And very soon, at the moment, I live in a tiny little town in Ireland, which is 4,000 people. And in 3 weeks' time, I'm moving to a hamlet of about 20 on a sort of a headland sticking out into the sea. And the process of building a house, which is has also brought me into contact with a lot of people, a lot of local craftspeople and shop people and everything. I've had a sort of a reason to talk to people, and it's been, and also I'm learning how it works here, because I remember the first time I stopped my car to ask someone for directions, and this was when I was still living in London. I stopped my car, and it was like a 10-minute conversation. And I was going nuts in my head because I was just like, I've got to go. And I finally got the information about which way to go. And then when I spoke to someone about it, and they said, oh no, you can't just ask that. It would be really rude to just give someone the information, because this is an opportunity to build connections. So it's like, you can't do anything quickly. And I kind of, now I love that, because they'll probably say to me, not only will they give me directions, but they'll probably tell me that someone I know is already there, or that, you know, there's this web of relationships and knowledge that is held. And Ireland still has, because it has never been a rich country, because England took all their money by colonizing them. And I speak as someone who is half Irish and half English, so I'm a mixture of colonized and colonizer. It didn't have an industrial revolution. It's never really been a rich industrialized country. It still has a lot of its old indigenous ways, and they work. They're lovely, you know. Karen, you want to join in? Yeah.
I just want to say I'm sorry I was late, and I am loving this conversation. But I've had enough time to sit here, and like 3 really great ideas of you should say this went through my head. And now that I'm here, I have to give you the last one, which I think is worthy in a lot of ways. Okay, I don't think of myself as radical at all. I mean, my best friend would tell you, oh no, I blew up the world because I started this blog and quit my job, and you don't even know those women. What the hell's wrong with you? But my question to the group is not as positive as what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This happened to me this week. Jody, if anybody I know will relate to this. I came home from the store and I had a voicemail message from a reporter. And now that I'm not having conferences and I'm not out like I was, I haven't had a reporter call in a while. So my head's getting big and I'm like, oh, yay, they remember me. And this woman gives me her name and tells me that she writes for Epic News and that she's doing a story on the increasing number of women who are choosing to be child-free. And she was focused mostly on younger women and wanted to know, you know, if I had anybody I could recommend her to talk to, and da, 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 da. Okay, fine. So because I'm not dumb, I took my big head and I Googled Epic News. And I was horrified to see that the small little Google paragraph next to stuff, all that told me was it was a cult in the second word. And it was run by this organization, an Asian name that I had never heard of. And it's far right, and they support Trump. So I said, okay, but I kept digging because I'm curious now. So I get to the description of this Asian group that's behind them, and somewhere in upstate New York, they have a 25-acre campus. And so my head, I'm old, I'm a hippie, so I'm thinking commune, oh my God, this is Yellow Jackets. What is it? And the more I dug, and I found out more about the right-wing part and the Trump part and whatever, but I realized, partly out of fear, but mostly out of having common sense, that I was not calling this broad back.
Yeah.
And what it took me to really I thought a pinch of this before, but I really locked in that day, is that, because I got Google alerts and all that, I do get a lot of headlines going by that there are more women. And I've always preached that it's not just here in America. And finally, I'm seeing the headlines catch up with that, England, oh my God, we have no moms, and now it's like China even, it's like, but what I realized was, in the wrong right-wing, possibly cultish group, no matter what I gave them, even if I just gave them stats, here you go, here's the stats for all these countries, got to go by, they could twist that so that tomorrow my house will be bombed and I will get death threats. And when I thought that, the new thought I had, which was sort of horrifying, was these young women who are coming out in, historic numbers to choose not to have a child and choose to tell everybody, because, hey, this is what I'm doing, are, I hate to say in danger, but suddenly my heart felt like they were. And the Not Mom's one of those weird is sites where, I don't give a darn how you wound up living your life without kids, by choice, by chance, whatever. I say we're all in the same boat at the end of the day. You cry to sleep your way, I'll cry my way, but we're all at the same place. And so I just thought about that, about if I'm right, the world is going to be very different and changeable for those young women in historic numbers around the freaking globe who are choosing not to have children, choosing to tell their parents and fight that fight, choosing to tell their best friend, sure, I'll be a bridesmaid, but no, I have no
Well,
kids.
this is one of the reasons why Christine Erickson, set up the New Legacy Institute, and because she and I both share, a sentiment looking at history and how history works in these places, that, as the population experiences a big change, because, over the last 50 years, so many more of us haven't had children for, as you say, for whatever reason. And as the population declines from the baby boom years to those years, economically, that is really, really difficult to manage in the current economic system, which is a Ponzi scheme, which is where it requires more and more young people coming in as taxpayers to kind of keep the whole thing going. Well, that's now broken. So what is often the case when we see a big, radical shift in the way our society operates is that people look for a scapegoat. Because let's not look at a systemic reason. It's the fault of all those women for not having children. So I do think we are going to see, and we are already seeing it, some very aggressive. I think we are going to see pronatalism being weaponized against people without children, and that includes us. I think it's very important that we stand together over it. Maria,
I keep reading that by 2045. Fertility will be pretty much zero, and it's not just going to be women. So, you can weaponize the young women till the cows come home, but if their men are not able to fertilize the egg, then, what's the point? So, I think these numbers are being put out there a lot, so that, and it is male fertility. Not female.
Yes, there are some doctors,
that,
scientists
Maria,
doing work around it, and it's about all of the chemicals that are in the environment that are having a huge impact on males.
And none of us should be surprised that the women are getting attacked and not the men.
No.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
And what guy is gonna go bopping around going, that's right, I can't get hard. I ain't, no, it's women who go find a girlfriend and go, give me a hug, give me some love. I mean,
no, I mean, the next, the next 20,
can I
30
say
years.
this before my menopause takes this out of my head? The bottom line of what I was trying to babble through was, as somebody who has always believed that women without children walk a different path. I can see you on your path, but it's a different path. And I've tried to love them all, no matter what, which at first wasn't that easy for me because I really, really, really wanted kids. And I had never met a child-free woman. But I guess the bottom line of my point was, I think that going to Maria's point of community, that all of us, regardless of how we got in this space, need to be thinking in it, right now of how can I help these women who are right behind me? This is not like the next generation of 5-year-olds. They are right on our ass. And they may not have a great time.
That's one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why I created this, because where are the childless and child-free elders? Where do they go? And we need to be visible so that they can find us. Because just as elders need youngers, youngers need elders. Absolutely. Sue, you've been very patient.
Sorry, Sue.
Oh, it's no problem. I just wanted to add on to Karen's comment that a lot of people in the pronatalist society don't bother to ask how we came to be childless. They just assume that we didn't want them, and there are so many different ways, which Jody has outlined, of how people can come to be without children, and many of them are not at all what we wanted or chose. But there's a danger they don't bother to listen to how it happened or why. So there's that. And I think, I live in Oregon, as does Kate, and it's so much more liberal. I mean, people are talking from Texas, and I know, very different. And, I feel safer here. I have numerous friends who are without children. Most of them I met through music. But people need to start. I do feel a need too to talk to my readers who are much younger, who are still in that decision space in their life. Say, look, this is what it's like and what it's going to be. It's not just this one thing. It's a million other things that come with it. So we need to be seen and heard. And if people don't like it, tell them.
I see that Mary and Kate. Mary hasn't spoken yet. Please come into the call, Mary.
Hi, ladies. Through my recent horrible health, all I kept hearing whenever I went to any hospital appointment was your family this and your family that, and I was sick of telling people there is no family. Yes, I'm married, but there's nobody else around to help. And even healthcare systems have this great assumption that there are going to be reams of people in the background that are related to you by blood that are going to help you with appointments, all the paperwork, getting prescriptions, picking up the pieces, going to visit you when you're feeling really poorly, providing meals. It's not realistic. And I was really concerned about all the elderly people there who have nobody, how they have to manage all the paperwork they get, all the different appointments. And I was saying to the nurses, who helps them? And she said, we don't have enough resources. And I was thinking, oh my God, so that's got to change.
Well, I mean, in the UK, historically, that job would have been done by a social worker. Yes. But there now isn't enough money in the social work system. And actually, social workers only deal with extremely, very, very complex circumstances. And even then, they're only there for a short time. But I do remember when I was growing up that some families had social workers that were kind of attached to them for life almost. That sort of helped families that were troubled in lots of, were disadvantaged in lots of different ways.
Yeah, I mean, my family had a social worker because my dad was chronically sick. So we were automatically assigned to this person who was amazing and helped my mother with loads of things.
And was the interface with the system?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now you have to find everything out yourself. And I was being told, oh, you will be entitled to all these benefits and you'll get this. No, you have to fight for everything, and you have to find out all the information.
And that is what advocates, younger advocates do. Yeah, absolutely.
And it just worries me that there are younger women coming up in the world who don't have children, and if anything happens to them, it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Well, my plan, just not this year, building a house, finishing a novel, kind of taking up my headspace. But once I want to do create a pilot study with the Gateway Elderwomen, which is really about how to build what I created a word, you know how I love creating words, for when I was with Aging Without Children, alterkin. How do we create alternative kinship networks in our local communities, where we invest in relationships with younger and older people with the specific intention of being there for each other as people without children? How do we intentionally create alternative kinship networks, multi-generational? Rural Ireland is quite insular. There aren't very many childless people here. There's a lot of shame in Ireland. It still has the underpinning of a Catholic family values culture. If I can make it happen, I mean, I could do it in London in a heartbeat, but if I can make it work here, actually think about how do we create the systems and the frameworks? How do we provide the support? How do we self-engineer the kind of communities we need? Because I'm going to need one.
I mean, I've started something similar with I've got two friends who are childless. One is in her 30s, one is in her 70s, and sort of things like tradesmen that I know are reliable, we've kind of swapped, so I've got a cleaner now because she goes and cleans my friends' houses. I've got a man called Chicken Dave who comes and delivers me chicken now.
Well, I've been speaking to other kind of community elders around the world, and I'm sort of continuing to speak to them when I kind of come across them and when they're introduced to me. And Kate's someone who's very hot on this, and I haven't even had a chance to talk to her about this because this is next year's project. But to sort of Patricia's point, is like, yeah, we need a community, and we probably need to create it for myself. And something, when I was one of the original founders of Aging Without Children, one of the things we said is, if we can improve aging for people without children, we will improve aging for everyone, because it catches so many vulnerabilities. It's like, if we can, because it's hard on everyone, it can be brutal on those aging without children, also without partners too. I just want to, Karen, Susan hasn't spoken yet.
Okay.
There are a couple of things. There's a couple of things in the chat. I'll come back to you. You are next. Did you see in the question and answer box that, Susan, have you seen there are a few people who are solo, unmarried, childless, really kind of looking for kind of affirmation of what that's like, and finding your, and I hate to land it on you because you obviously maybe you've only just seen them, but would you share a little bit about your journey as being, I mean, in Totem Global yesterday, you described yourself as a spinster, so I hope you're okay for me to use it.
Yeah, I am starting to use that word about myself. And I am starting to use it because it no longer makes me uncomfortable, but I notice it makes other people uncomfortable.
So it's radical of you to use it.
Yeah. And to be joyful about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I am.
I like that.
I get a lot of being always single, never married, is harder for me to talk about now than being childless, not by choice. So I'm sorry if I get a little bit weepy. It's taken me a long time to get past that, the language of not being picked, not being chosen, being the wallflower, not wanted, which puts all the power the other way. It means I'm waiting, and being asked, so what am I doing to, well, I'm no longer asked anymore because it's obviously too late for me, but post-menopause. But, you know, through my 30s and 40s, yeah, those sort of suggestions as to what I might get, what I might do about this problem. It's taken me a long time to flip that round and think about, well, I don't want that. I want to work on being magnetic, not because I'm looking for somebody, but because I want people to, I want interesting interactions. I cannot assume that relationships are going to be long-standing, that I've, you know, this person's in a committed relationship with me. No, all I can rely on is making a really good 5-minute connection at the bus stop, and then making a really good, perhaps 10 or 15-minute connection at the hospital. I've got to work on those really basic, I see you, do you see me connections, because I've got to make them work at points where it matters to me. At the bus stop, it only matters that I perhaps need help for a little bit more time to get to the bus because I'm slow walking. And, you know, use a stick and all that sort of thing. But, you know, at the hospital, it might be really important. I get a lot of, for me, it's all about internal work, because that's the only thing I can really control.
Yeah.
I get a lot of strength from the idea of thinking that any hierarchical system is going to create shame. Now, the fact that childlessness is the first thing, being single and childless is the first thing where I am not the dominant white power structure. It's the first time I've come across it. But anyone who is gay, anyone who is Black, they will already have realized that they are not part of, you know, they're pushed down in the hierarchy. So I get a lot of information from reading about how people who have dealt with that their entire lives, how they cope, how they reframe things. I've come because of my, the other thing I enjoy is the idea of thinking, so this person's telling me that I've made a mistake, or I am a mistake, or whatever. A mistake is when someone with more power than you in the system does not like the choice, the need you are trying to meet. So it's not about, so you might be trying to meet a need for acceptance. They might want a need for, I don't know, stability or affirmation. They need you to say you're doing a great job at being a mother or something. Well, I can do that. But I don't need to betray myself in the same moment. As long as I remember what I need in the interaction and bring that as well. I'm not very good at it. I'm still practicing.
And as women and girls, you know, depends on your culture, but many cultures, you're not really taught how to do that. You're taught to work out what is the dominant power play and how do I fit into that? How do I get small?
That's right. How do I get
accepted? Yeah.
That's right. How do I make myself look acceptable to this person?
As a way to be safe.
As a way to be safe.
Which is kind of, when, you know, to bring it back to being radical, is that we're also, you know, radical is also to be unsafe. It's to stick out. It's to stick out and go, no, I don't buy into this system, you know?
Yes, but you can be humorous about it as well, can't you? Can't we do that, Jody?
Oh, you know me, I'm always up for it. But then also for radical to be a choice is also a privilege. Because, you know, I could be a radical and it doesn't fundamentally, you know, affect, you know, my life and my income. and my personal safety. You know, there are many people in the world for whom being radical is a life-threatening choice. You know,
Yes.
so I also have to recognize my privilege in that and in this conversation.
Yeah.
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 I'm going to go to Karen and then Kate. Karen was waiting.
My question will take us back to your next year project, Jody. And for the rest
Are you
of
moving to Ireland? Everyone is.
No, I'm not moving to Ireland. The rest of you, I think Jody knows this, may not know that I spent 10 to 12 years of my public relations and editorial management career working at a Catholic hospital, where the nuns were still there, and that's important. I am not Catholic. I was always fascinated by nuns. I mean, I grew up when, you know, Sound of Music and Audrey Hepburn and, you know, the whole nine. But I loved my congregation because they had balls, which I almost messed up and told them one day. So I was gonna say to Jody, think about it, think about how you're gonna word it, and take a chance that there in Ireland, there is a priest, but preferably nuns who will talk to you. And you don't necessarily have to ask them to do anything on day one. Just
I've met some pretty radical, I've met and I've read about some pretty radical nuns. I mean, they are our childless elders. There could be, I think it's, thank you for reminding me of that. There's probably some amazing women I could meet.
Yeah, but they can only talk so far depending on the atmosphere they're in.
Yeah.
But in general, what I was thinking, and all of this is hypocritical because I've never been to Ireland. I was thinking that people, particularly women who are interested in what you're doing there, will be like, oh, what would the church say? And all it takes is Sister Marietta to say, that's not that bad. And a lot of them have personalities like that. I've been working on the Not Mom on and off for about 12 years. And I have met more ministers, always male, at Black churches and Baptist churches and Catholic, you know, I mean, you name it. And they're all like, well, because my opening question is always, do you have a feel for how many women without children are in the congregation? And they're like, what? And part of that wow reaction that I get from them is because my second question is usually, so what do you do on Mother's Day for them? And it really makes them
can I just circle back to the introduction when you said that you weren't radical? And can I just blow that out of the water, please?
Okay, well, I'm done. That it was just that so many of these social networks that are fraying in our communities that we've been talking about, many of them are holding on in many ways by their fingernails to a church or a temple or, you know, some religious upbringing. And I think it's been our experience, either through friends or ourselves, that religious cord is another piece of loss sometimes for women without children. Definitely. By chance or by choice.
Yeah. It's another community we can feel exiled from.
It is. And but those religious leaders, the good ones, want community. And that's where their horror comes, that I never thought about them. You know, I mean, if anything, they've thought about the grandmothers of the church, but they literally have no clue why Jody Day doesn't come to Mothering Day services every year. And they've never asked. So that's all I'm throwing out.
Thank you, Karen. And we'll definitely revisit this in September for World Childless Week. There was a question in the Q&A about grieving motherhood and then grandmotherhood and the difference. we don't have time to go into that today, but on one of the, if you go to the Gateway Women website and go to the Childless Elderwomen section and have a look at some of our previous recordings, it is something we have looked at before. If you can't find it, I don't want to say your name, just email me, jody@gateway-women.com, and I will direct you to that conversation, because we are kind of out of time. So, so I know I just want to keep going. So maybe, you know, be lovely to hear from everyone a few last words about, I guess my question is what do we want to do with our radical? What are we going to do with it? It feels, as I said, it feels like an incredible privilege and an opportunity to look at things afresh and maybe to do things differently than we might have done had we been mothers and grandmothers. I'm just wondering, what do we want to do with it? Anyone just want to check out with that quickly? Just put your hand up, and yeah, Sue, and then Kate, and then Trish.
One of the other definitions of radical I saw was that tending or disposed to make extreme changes in existing views, habits, conditions, or institutions.
Ooh.
And yeah, and I think we need to, in other words, we refuse to accept the status quo. And listening to everybody, I'm thinking one of the things I need to do is go talk to my priest and rattle his cage a little bit, because I almost cried on Father's Day. Again, I'm sitting at the piano and I can't escape. And he went on and on about family. But when he asked the fathers to stand, there were at least 8 men who did not stand. And I don't know their stories, but he's got to consider that many of us are not fathers or mothers for whatever reason. So we need to rattle at least one cage. We need to say, hey, we're here. You need to acknowledge us, and acknowledge also that this constant talk about the joys of family hurts. You know? So
Joyce, it's fine to talk about the joys of family, but it's not fine to degrade their humanity because they don't have a partner or children.
Or to assume that everybody does.
But yeah, those
not
two
always
things.
ignoring their, I don't think it's always ignoring their humanity. My first thought was it ignores their pain. It ignores their reality. You know, I mean, and that's what bothers me the few times I've talked to religious men, because it seems there's no curiosity for it, you know, to know more. And when it comes to Catholic priests, because, you know, it's really drained into them that, you know, the only way God loves you is to have a kid. I don't know. I mean, but I know I feel bad for the men, you know what I mean? Every purple moon, I think I should do something for the men, because I don't hear much from them, but when I do, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, they hurt too, but I think we have to speak up. I think that's my final word, is we have to say the unsayable, say the unacceptable. We have to say it.
I love that. I think the next, it was Kate and then Trish, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Susan brought up the reframing. And I think we have a lesson to learn from the gay population in the personalizing of the situation in which we all, whether we're childless, child-free, or ambivalent, that we find ourselves. Everyone knows someone who doesn't have children. And the moment that we can introduce that very early in our conversations, whether at church, at school, at home, at work, well, who else do you know who doesn't have? Do you know any other people in your family? And what were they like? What were their lives like? How did they age? How did you support them? How did they get support? How were they different than you? You open it up that way, and all of a sudden we become real. I have had so many people say to me, gosh, and somebody mentioned this earlier, I've never actually thought about what life would be like from your perspective. So we don't have to open our hearts and say, here's what my personal voyage was, when we can point out the voyages that have been unknown in our aunts, our uncles, our, you know, in the prior generations. We all know people.
I absolutely agree. It's one of my, when I used to go to cocktail parties, remember those? You know, and people would say, you know, what do you do? And I think, oh God, How much do I want to say? And I'll talk about it. And then I would just, and when I get that kind of look, you know, ooh, and I'd say, you probably know someone impacted, you know, by involuntary childlessness. Sort of everyone does. And then you'd see them do that kind of NLP thing of kind of look up and then come back to you and go, oh, yes, my daughter's friend, the person at work, my daughter-in-law, my grandson, my this. And suddenly, exactly as Kate said, suddenly it's like, I said, I'm one of the 1 in 5 women that doesn't have children. You probably know some. Everyone does. And you know, I've been doing that now for several years. Not a single person, Kate, hasn't been able to think of someone in their workplace, their family, their community, someone that is childless. They may not necessarily know why, just someone who doesn't have kids. And they'll go, yeah.
What do they do on Mother's Day? What do they do on Father's Day? Never thought about that before.
And it is a great way of making it about the subject rather than about me.
Exactly.
Because, you know, I really don't want to tell my story to another person. It's just like, you know, just Google me. It's all out there. Thanks, Kate. Trish.
To be honest, I think Sue kind of, you know, it's like she's just ventriloquized, if that's a word for it. Because I think you said everything I was going to say, Sue, to tell you the truth, and everybody.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, it's the same thing. It's getting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that I almost apologise for the fact that I'm childless. I don't realise it. It's subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
I'm childless. You know, I can sort of apologise. You just got to stop. It's just matter of fact, isn't it? I don't have any. So, you know, that's it. And the more, and again, we're saying it, the more times we say it, the more times we get it out there, the more, I don't like the word, but normalised it becomes. It has to be part of the conversation, if you like.
Yeah.
We have to be included, if you like. But I think it's all been said. I think everybody's said everything, and
I would say that your work, actually, Trish, with, you know, with your blog and the committees that you sit on and the podcasts that you're an interviewee on, you've done a huge amount already to kind of really bring that conversation alive. And I'm really grateful to you for that. And it's lovely knowing you and getting to know you. And I'm grateful to you to be here. It's really important that we tell it how it is. And one of the things I love about your work is you don't say it's all rainbows and flowers, you know, which I think is also really important, because younger women fear aging without children and perhaps fear it too much. But there's also shit we need to prepare for, you know, and it's not that it's terrible, and it's not that it's skippy, happy, wonderful either. It's life.
Yes, and the funny thing is, when I was younger, it didn't bother anybody. Nobody spoke about it at all, because I'm in my 70s. So when I was younger, I was proper younger. You know, it's really going back. Well, some of you were born probably. And, you know, it didn't seem to matter. But then I had a partner. So, you know, I guess that was different. But, you know, somebody was talking about today, I think it was Karen, was saying that people are making their mind up now not to have children very early on. And I have a friend, and she's got 3 kids, and the youngest is 13, a daughter. She's already decided she's not going to have children. She's not going to have children. She's going to adopt. I mean, where they're going to adopt from, because nobody's having children. But, you know, I found that quite sad. I didn't say that to her, but I went away and thought, I don't know, that seems quite a young age to make that decision. Because a lot of people, as I think Karen said, are doing that.
A lot of people who choose to be child-free know very young that they don't want to have children. And, you know, some of them choose for different reasons. Some of them perhaps due to pressures, or they change their own mind as they grow older, do go on to have children. I didn't want to have children when I was little, but mine was a response to trauma. It's like, I just didn't want to, I thought having children meant having my family. And it's like, I barely survived my family. So, you know, when I was a young woman, I just thought, no, it was too scary. You know, that it didn't kick in for me until I was, you know, in my late 20s. And then I thought, oh, actually, yeah. You know, so it's a complex thing. Something in the chat, someone is saying that we need to do a workshop on this. It is in development, just so you know. Probably next summer, I'll be hosting the first sort of Gateway Elderwomen weekend workshop, when I actually know a bit more what I'm talking about, which is not quite yet. because I'm still in gathering. But they do say teach what you need to learn. So I'm in learning mode, and I'm learning from these wonderful women. So we're 10 minutes overdue. So a few last words from Maria, from Karen, from Susan, from Mary. Go on. Maria?
Yeah, I love the possibilities, actually. I know it's a really hard journey when you're childless, and it is different for everybody, but I do love the idea that we're going to be forced to shed the system that has been crushing us. And I think there is an opportunity for childless women and childless men to, just because we do have space for it, to be able to have an important role in shaping something totally different, something that's saner.
Oh, I love that. I said that at the end of my TED talk, like in 2017, and people were like, what? But I do think that our perspective, because we have lived outside the mainstream, it does sort of show us that there are other ways to do things, other ways to be, and that we can find our way in an unwelcoming world. We can find each other. I do think that we perhaps have the techniques and the resilience, because when you've been through the kind of grief we've been through and you've come through the other side, when you have the painful knowledge of knowing that you can survive the thing you don't think you can live without, that builds something very precious. And I'm not saying we're the only people who've got that, but I do think as we age, there's a certain gift there that our mothers' hearts feel called also to offer to others. Yeah, thank you for that, Maria. I'm excited about it. Yeah, about the whole aging thing. But yeah, I think I've always felt quite old inside, and now I'm sort of catching up. Yeah, it's Mary and Susan and Karen. Yeah, Mary.
I think going through childlessness makes you more resilient, whether you realise it or not. I think that people might be a bit afraid of us, that we're starting to speak out now about what's important, about being more inclusive of everybody and everything. I think we're going to ruffle a lot of feathers, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I think you're right. I think there'll be a lot of pushback against that, going back to Karen's point at the beginning or earlier about, people sort of starting to, really anti women, young women without children. I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think they will be looking to their elders to stand up for them. I suspect they won't see it coming. Yeah.
Somebody just said in the chat, luckily as an older person.
Yeah, but like Elizabeth's great aunt, this is not my first pandemic. So I have some idea of the shit that's coming down the line.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for jumping in at the last minute and joining the Nomo Crone panel. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you for having me.
Susan and Karen, and then we absolutely have to close.
Oh, thank you for letting me join this fantastic panel and the discussion in the chat as well. Yeah, I don't think I've got anything to add. Just I enjoyed the idea of simplification and I enjoy the idea of separating from our functions, not refusing to be identified by our functions in relation to other people. Just going out in the world, one interaction at a time.
Yeah.
With as much warmth and curiosity as we can summon for other people's struggles and joys.
Warmth and curiosity. That's so beautiful, and you just described yourself. Thank you. Thank you. Karen, can you lead us out with a last word or two?
Jody.
Doesn't matter. You just say it. You're always brilliant.
I've been thinking, I think it was Maria who got this going through my head, that I don't know why, but over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the elder childless women in my family. My family was pretty much all female, but there were 3 women, a teacher, a housekeeper, and another housekeeper who didn't have kids, and raised in somewhere around the 40s, let's say, they were ashamed and shamed because, you know, those were the ones who, those were the elders who, you know, they might say, oh my goodness, look at Jody's hair. And Jody's mother would come close to backhanding the other relative across the room. Or just saying something so smart-mouthed and hurtful. You don't have children. Why would you be talking to my child and tell her what her hair looks like? And so I've been thinking about those women for some reason. They've just continued to be on my mind. And that got me, I guess, if I'm ending, you're wrapping up things, I would say that thought took me to what we've been talking about here today, about this next on our butts generation. And I think the one of the few things I thought earlier that hadn't been said or acknowledged, I'll say, is that the women, and Jody probably knows this, the women who want children and are not going to have them, may feel, I don't want to say worse, but worse than, you know, the crop we've had, because that number of women who choose it is going to go up. So how many mean girls are in that group to look back at the childless ones and go, you want a kid, really? I didn't know that. You know, so I'm looking forward to working with you in any way I can, or helping you, Jody, because I really love this idea of just, you know, I mean, look at your screen and the face, all of our faces. And I think about, even if it's online, I bet you there's a lot of young women who would get something out of this.
We had a lot of young women registered for this call. We had women registered from their late 20s to their late 70s for this call. Yeah, cool. Really cool. Yes. So as they say on TV chat shows, if anyone ever does those things anymore, hi, I've been Jody Day. You've been watching the Nomo Crones. And we will be back in September for an edition for World Childless Week. Can't tell you what that's going to be about yet because it's under wraps. But you will find in the Gateway Women online community, which is now called Lighthouse Women, you'll find the details for that on the Gateway Women website. We have a subgroup there, which is called Childless Elderwomen. You're very welcome to join us there to continue the conversation. You'll also find me on Instagram at Apprentice Crone. And when I post the video, I will include all the details for all our wonderful panelists so you can follow their work. You can buy their books, please, and generally support all the amazing things in the world that this wonderful group of radical old women are doing. So thank you so much for being with us. And we will see you again soon. Bye.
Good to see everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.